The Velthari Empire had been conquering worlds for over 500 years. They had taken 17 star systems and enslaved billions of creatures from dozens of different species. Their warships were the largest in the known galaxy, and their soldiers were trained to kill without mercy. No one had ever defeated them. No one had ever even come close. High Commander Zorith stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was tall, even by Velthari standards, with gray skin that looked like old leather and 4 eyes that glowed a faint yellow in the dim light. He had led the Empire's fleets for 30 years, and in that time he had never lost a single battle. He did not expect to lose one now. His fleet consisted of 800 warships, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and carriers filled with fighter craft. It was the largest force the Empire had ever assembled for a single conquest, and their target was a small cluster of worlds at the edge of known space. Inhabited by a species called humans, the Empire's scouts had been watching the humans for several years. They were a young species, having only achieved space travel about 300 years ago. Their technology was primitive by Velthari standards. Their military was small. Their population was spread across only a handful of worlds. They would be easy prey as the fleet approached the edge of human territory. Zorith's communication officer picked up a strange signal. It was a message, repeating on all frequencies in hundreds of different languages. "This is Terran space. Entry by hostile forces is forbidden. This is your only warning." Zorith listened to the message and laughed. His officers joined him, their harsh voices filling the bridge with cruel amusement. The idea that such a weak species would dare to threaten the mighty Velthari Empire was simply too funny. "Play it again," Zorith ordered. "I want everyone to hear the sound of prey pretending to be predator." The message played again, and again the Velthari laughed. They had heard threats before. Every species they conquered had made threats. None of them had ever been able to back up their words with action. The humans would be no different. Far away, on the other side of the border, Admiral Catherine Cole watched the approaching fleet on her tactical display. She was a small woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She stood on the bridge of the carrier resolute, her hands clasped behind her back, her face showing no emotion at all. Commander Daniel Price stood beside her. He was younger than Cole, with dark hair and a nervous energy that he tried hard to hide. He had served under the Admiral for 5 years, and he had learned to trust her judgment completely. But even he felt a knot of fear in his stomach as he watched the massive enemy fleet drawing closer. "They received our warning," Price said. "They are not slowing down." "They never do," Cole replied. Her voice was calm, almost bored. "The arrogant ones never listen to warnings. They have to learn the hard way." She turned to her communication officer. "Open a channel to the lead ship." The officer worked his console, and a moment later, the face of High Commander Zorith appeared on the main view screen. His 4 eyes studied Cole with obvious contempt. To him, she was nothing more than an insect, a creature to be crushed beneath his foot. "Little creature," Zorith said. "I am High Commander Zorath of the Velthari Empire. Your worlds now belong to us. Your people will be harvested and enslaved. If you surrender immediately, we may show some of you mercy. If you resist, you will all die screaming." Cole nodded slowly, as if she was thinking about his offer. Then she spoke, her voice still calm, still showing no fear. "Hi, Commander. I am Admiral Catherine Cole of the Terran Defense Force. I understand your position. Now let me explain ours. In approximately 6 hours, your fleet will cross into our territory. When that happens, every single ship under your command will be destroyed. Every soldier, every officer, every crew member will die. There will be no survivors. There will be no prisoners. Your empire will receive your remains in small boxes, if they receive anything at all." Zora stared at her for a long moment. No one had ever spoken to him like this. No one had ever dared. He felt a flicker of something in his chest, something he had not felt in decades. It took him a moment to recognize it as doubt, but he pushed the feeling away. He was High Commander Zorith. He had conquered worlds. He had crushed armies. He would not be frightened by the empty threats of a primitive species. "You are brave," he said. or perhaps simply stupid. Either way, you will die like all the others. He cut the connection, and Cole's face disappeared from his screen. He turned to his officers, his expression hard. Increase speed. I want to be in weapons range within 5 hours. Back on the Resolute, Commander Price let out a long breath. Do you think he believed you? Cole shook her head. No, they never believe us. They look at our small ships and our young civilization, and they think we are weak. They do not understand what we really are. And what are we? Price asked. Cole turned to look at him, and for the first time, he saw something cold and dangerous in her eyes. Something that reminded him of the old stories, the tales of what humans had done to each other before they reached the stars. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us every single day, she said. We are the survivors of 1,000 wars, 1,000 plagues, 1,000 disasters. Every generation of our people has been forged in fire. Every technological advance we have ever made came from our need to find better ways to fight. Better ways to kill, better ways to survive. The Velthari think they are predators. They have no idea what a real predator looks like. She turned back to the view screen, watching the enemy fleet grow larger with each passing minute. Send the signal to the main fleet, she ordered. Tell them the trap is ready. And tell them to remember what happened to Earth's colonies in the First Contact War. Tell them to remember Shanghai and New Delhi. Tell them to remember what we swore we would never let happen. Again, Price nodded and moved to the communication station. Around him, the crew of the Resolute prepared for battle. There was no fear in their faces, no hesitation. They knew what was coming. They knew what they had to do. 6 hours later, the Velthari fleet crossed the border into Terran space, and the killing began. The Velthari fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 800 warships spread across thousands of kilometers of empty space, their weapons charged and their shields raised. High Commander Zoroth stood at the center of his bridge, his 4 eyes scanning the darkness ahead for any sign of the enemy. He expected to find the small human carrier he had spoken to hours before. Perhaps a handful of escort ships. Maybe a few defensive platforms. Nothing that could stand against the might of his armada. What he found instead made his blood run cold. The space ahead was filled with ships. Human ships. Thousands of them. Dreadnoughts larger than anything the Velthari had ever built. Cruisers bristling with weapons that glowed with strange energies. Carriers surrounded by clouds of fighter craft. And at the center of it all, the small carrier Resolute, looking like a commander standing before her army. Impossible, Zoroth whispered. Our scouts reported only one ship. Where did they all come from? His tactical officer's hands were shaking as he worked his console. Sir, I am reading over 3,000 vessels. Their weapons are unlike anything in our database. Their power signatures are off the scale. Zoroth's mind raced. This was a trap. The humans had hidden their true strength, had lured him in with a single ship, had let him think they were weak. And he had walked right into it like a fool. Admiral Cole's voice came through the communication system, calm and cold. Hi, Commander. I gave you fair warning. Your fleet has entered Terran territory with hostile intent. Under Terran law, you and your ships are now classified as enemy combatants. May whatever gods you pray to have mercy on your souls, because we will not. The first shot came from the dreadnought Unconquerable. Captain Samuel Drake had been waiting for this moment for hours. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Maria Santos, pressed the firing sequence with steady hands and a grim smile on her face. The Unconquerable's main guns were railguns. Massive electromagnetic accelerators that could throw tungsten slugs at a fraction of the speed of light. The projectiles crossed the gap between the fleets in seconds. Too fast for the Velthari to even see them coming. The first 3 battleships in the Velthari formation simply exploded. One moment they were there, the next they were expanding clouds of debris and frozen bodies. Their shields had done nothing. Their armor had done nothing. The human weapons had torn through them like paper. Zoroth watched in horror as more of his ships died. The humans were firing from all directions now, their fleets surrounding the Velthari formation like a pack of wolves surrounding a wounded animal. Plasma fire, missile barrages, and those terrifying railgun slugs tore into his forces from every angle. "Return fire!" he screamed. All ships returned fire. The Velthari fleet responded, their plasma cannons sending streams of superheated energy toward the human ships. But something was wrong. The plasma splashed harmlessly against human shields, absorbed or deflected by technology the Empire had never seen before. It was like throwing rocks at a mountain. Commander Elena Vance led the first fighter wing into the battle. Her squadron, the Hellhounds, consisted of 12 small craft, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy. A Velthari cruiser. She had been a pilot for 15 years, and she had trained for this moment her entire career. "All Hellhounds, engage at will," she ordered. "Pick your targets and make them count." Her fighters dove into the chaos, weaving between enemy ships and friendly fire with impossible skill. Human pilots flew differently than other species. They took risks that would be considered suicidal by any other military. They pushed their machines beyond their limits and somehow survived. It was as if they had been born to fight in the cold darkness of space. Vance locked onto a Velthari destroyer and fired. Her missiles streaked toward the enemy ship, punching through its weakened shields and detonating inside its hull. The destroyer broke apart, spilling crew members into the vacuum. "Splash one," she reported. Moving to secondary targets, all around her, the battle raged. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, each one knowing exactly where every other ship was and what it was doing. The Velthari tried to regroup, tried to form defensive lines, but the humans anticipated every move. It was like fighting an enemy that could read their minds. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Zorath watched his fleet die. In the first 2 minutes of the battle, he had lost a quarter of his ships. By minute 5, that number had climbed to half. His officers were screaming for orders, but he had no orders to give. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for this. "Sir, we need to retreat," his second-in-command shouted. "We need to jump to hyperspace before they destroy us all." Zorath nodded. It was the only choice left. "All ships, emergency retreat. Jump to hyperspace immediately." But when the Velthari ships tried to engage their hyperspace drives, nothing happened. Their engines powered up, their navigation systems locked onto distant stars, but the jump refused to complete. "Now what is happening?" Zorath demanded. His science officer looked up from his console, his face pale with terror. "The humans have deployed some kind of interdiction field. It is preventing faster-than-light travel throughout the entire battle zone. We are trapped, sir. We cannot escape." The killing continued. Human ships hunted down the Velthari vessels one by one, destroying them with cold efficiency. There was no mercy, no quarter, no opportunity to surrender. The humans had promised death, and they were delivering it. By minute 11, it was over. Of the 800 ships that had crossed into Terran space, only 17 remained. They drifted in space, their engines destroyed, their weapons silent, their crews waiting to die. Admiral Cole's face appeared on Zorath's view screen. She looked exactly the same as she had hours before, calm and controlled, showing no emotion at all. "Hi, Commander. You and your surviving crew will be taken into custody. You will stand trial for crimes against humanity under Terran law. Your empire will be notified of your capture and informed of the terms of your surrender." Zorath stared at her, unable to speak. His mind could not process what had happened. His invincible fleet destroyed in 11 minutes. His career, his reputation, his empire's dominance, all gone in the blink of an eye. "What are you?" he finally whispered. "What kind of creatures are you?" Cole's expression did not change. "We are human," she said, "and you were warned." The view screen went dark, and Zorath was left alone with the silence of his ruined ship. Outside, human shuttles approached to collect the survivors. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. And somewhere in the cold darkness of space, 3,000 human warships turned their attention toward the heart of the Velthari Empire. Ready to finish what had been started, the news of the disaster reached the Velthari homeworld 3 days later. It spread through the Empire like a disease, infecting every corner of society with fear and disbelief. The mighty fleet that was supposed to conquer the humans had been wiped out in less than 15 minutes. High Commander Zorith, the greatest military leader in Velthari history, was now a prisoner of the very species he had planned to enslave. Supreme Arbiter Malthus sat in his private chamber, reading the reports over and over again. He was an old Velthari, with pale gray skin and eyes that had grown dim with age. He had ruled the Empire for 40 years, and in that time he had never faced a crisis like this. The Senate was in chaos. Senators screamed at each other, blaming the military, blaming the intelligence services, blaming anyone they could think of. Some called for immediate revenge, demanding that every remaining ship in the Empire be sent to destroy the humans. Others called for surrender, arguing that further resistance would only lead to more death. Malthus ignored them all. He needed information, not opinions. He summoned his chief intelligence officer, a cold and calculating Velthari named Sereth, and demanded answers.
Tell me everything.
We know about the humans, Malthus ordered. I want to understand how they did this. Sereth bowed low and began his report. What he revealed would haunt Malthus for the rest of his short life. The humans had not always been a peaceful species. In fact, they had spent most of their history at war with each other. Their homeworld, a small blue planet called Earth, had been a battleground for thousands of years. Humans had fought over land, over resources, over religion, over ideas. They had developed weapons of incredible destructive power, weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single blast. They had killed millions of their own kind in conflicts that seemed to have no purpose at all when they finally united and reached the stars. They brought their violent nature with them. But they also brought something else, something the Velthari had never considered. They brought experience. While the Velthari had evolved on a world with no serious threats, the humans had clawed their way to dominance on a planet that seemed designed to kill them. They had faced predators, diseases, natural disasters, and each other. Every generation had been tested, and only the strongest had survived. Their entire civilization was built on the foundation of struggle and conflict. Their military technology reflected this history. Human ships were not exploration vessels modified for combat. They were pure weapons, designed from the beginning to destroy enemies as efficiently as possible. Their shields used principles the Velthari did not understand, drawing power from sources that seemed impossible. Their weapons could tear through any armor, any defense, any protection the Empire could create, and their soldiers were trained to fight in ways that bordered on madness. Human military doctrine embraced risk, aggression, and sacrifice, where Velthari officers preferred cautious, coordinated attacks. Human commanders threw themselves into battle with reckless abandon. They seemed to have no fear of death, no concern for their own survival. They fought as if dying in combat was the highest honor they could achieve. In summary, Sereth concluded, the humans are the most dangerous species the Empire has ever encountered. They have been preparing for war since the day they first looked up at the stars. We are not facing a primitive civilization. We are facing a species of born killers who have spent centuries perfecting the art of destruction. Malthus sat in silence for a long time, processing what he had heard. Finally, he made his decision. We will send an ambassador to the humans, he said. We will offer them peace. We will apologize for our aggression and ask for the return of our people. Perhaps they will be reasonable. Sereth nodded, but his expression was doubtful. And if they refuse, Malthus's eyes hardened. Then we will assemble a new fleet, a larger fleet, and we will crush them with overwhelming force. The ambassador, an elderly diplomat named Varath, was sent to Terran space a week later. He traveled alone in an unarmed transport ship, hoping that the humans would see this as a sign of good faith. Admiral Cole received him aboard the Resolute. With Commander Price at her side and a full company of Terran Marines standing guard, the ambassador bowed low before the human officers, his body language showing complete submission. The Velthari Empire seeks peace, Vareth said. We acknowledge our error in entering your space without permission. We understand now that we underestimated your strength. Please, return our captured soldiers and allow us to withdraw. We will never threaten you again. Cole listened to his words with a face that showed nothing. When he finished, she turned to Commander Price. "Tell me, Commander, what do our intelligence reports say about Velthary activity beyond the Corvin Nebula?" Price checked his datapad. "Our scouts have detected a massive fleet massing in that region. Approximately 1,200 warships. They appear to be preparing for a major offensive." Cole turned back to the ambassador, her eyes cold. "So while you speak of peace, your empire is building another army to attack us. Did you think we would not notice? Did you think we were stupid?" Vareth's face went pale. He had not known about the Second Fleet, or perhaps he had known and hoped the humans would not find out. Either way, his mission had failed before it even began. "That fleet is purely defensive," he stammered. "A precaution, nothing more." 1,200 warships is not a precaution, Cole replied. "It is an invasion force, and it tells me that your empire has learned nothing from your defeat." She stepped closer to the ambassador, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Listen carefully, because I will only say this once. Your empire has one chance to survive. Withdraw your fleet. Retreat to your original borders. Never enter Terran space again. If you refuse or if you attempt any further aggression, we will not stop at defending our territory. We will come for you. We will burn your worlds and destroy your civilization. We will hunt your species to extinction and erase you from the history of the galaxy. This is not a threat. This is a promise." Varath returned to his ship and transmitted Cole's message to Supreme Arbiter Malthus. The old leader read the human's words and felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear, but fear was quickly replaced by anger. He was the supreme arbiter of the Velthary Empire. He had ruled for 40 years. He would not be frightened by the threats of a lesser species. The Second Fleet would attack, and this time, they would be ready for human tactics, he gave the order. And 1,200 warships began their journey toward Terran space. It was the last command he would ever give. The second. Velthary fleet was the largest military force the Empire had ever assembled. 1,200 warships, crewed by over 200,000 soldiers, armed with every weapon the Empire could produce. Supreme Arbiter Malthus had ordered them to attack from 17 different points simultaneously, hoping to overwhelm human defenses through sheer numbers. The fleet commanders had studied the recordings from the first battle. They knew about the human railguns and the strange shields that absorbed plasma fire. They knew about the interdiction fields that prevented escape. They had developed new tactics, new strategies, new approaches that they believed would give them an advantage. They were wrong, Admiral. Cole had anticipated every move the Empire would make. While the Velthary thought they were being clever, humans had already positioned their forces to counter every possible attack. When the enemy fleet emerged from hyperspace at 17 different points, they found waiting for them not scattered defenders, but coordinated kill zones designed to destroy them as quickly as possible, Captain. Nathan Hughes commanded the destroyer Lightning Storm, positioned at one of the expected incursion points. His ship was small by human standards, only 300 meters long with a crew of 200, but she carried weapons that could turn a Velthary's battleship into scrap metal in seconds. Hughes had been in the Navy for 20 years. He had fought in border skirmishes, pirate hunts, and training exercises. But this would be his first real battle against a major enemy fleet. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, the knowledge that the lives of his crew depended on every decision he made. Enemy ships emerging from hyperspace, his sensor officer reported. "I count 40 vessels. 30 cruisers, 8 destroyers, 2 battleships." Hughes nodded calmly. The odds were against them, 40 ships against his 1 destroyer and 3 support frigates. But he had something the Velthary did not have. He had surprise. All hands, battle stations, weapons free on my command. The Lightning Storm and her escorts had been running silent for 16 hours. Their power output reduced to almost nothing. Their hulls hidden against the dark background of space. The Velthary sensors had not detected them. They had no idea that death was waiting for them just a few thousand kilometers away. The enemy fleet began to organize itself, forming into attack formation, preparing to advance into human territory. They were moving slowly, cautiously, expecting resistance. They did not expect what came next. "Fire," Hughes ordered. The lightning storm's missile tubes opened, releasing a swarm of antimatter warheads. The missiles streaked toward the Velthri fleet, their guidance systems locking onto the largest targets. Behind them, the 3 frigates added their own weapons to the attack. The first Velthri battleship died in a ball of white fire as 3 missiles detonated against its hull. The antimatter warheads released more energy in a single second than a star produces in an hour. The battleship simply ceased to exist, along with the 2 cruisers that had been escorting it. The Velthri tried to respond, but the attack had come from an unexpected direction, and their formation was in chaos. Ships collided with each other, trying to turn and face the threat. Weapons fire went wild, hitting friendly vessels as often as enemies. Hughes pushed his advantage, driving the lightning storm directly into the heart of the enemy formation. It was a crazy move, the kind of thing that would get a Velthri officer court-martialed. But human commanders were trained to embrace risk, to seize opportunities, to attack when the enemy least expected it. His railguns spoke, punching holes through cruiser hulls. His point defense systems swatted down incoming missiles like annoying insects. His ship danced through the chaos, dealing death in every direction. Within 10 minutes, the Velthri attack group had been reduced to smoking wreckage. Hughes surveyed the battlefield, counting the kills. 38 enemy ships destroyed, 2 disabled and drifting. His own forces had suffered minor damage to 1 frigate. "Report to Fleet Command," he ordered. "Incursion Point 7 is secure." Moving to support adjacent sectors, similar scenes were playing out across all 17 incursion points. The Velthri had expected to catch human forces spread thin, unable to respond to simultaneous attacks. Instead, they found themselves facing a defense network that operated as a single entity. Each ship knowing exactly what every other ship was doing. Every commander able to see the entire battlefield in real time. Lieutenant Maria Santos served as weapons officer aboard the cruiser Vengeance. Under the command of Captain Andrew Pierce, she had been born on Earth in a small town in what used to be called Texas, and she had joined the Navy at 18 years old. Now, at 32, she was one of the best gunners in the fleet. The Vengeance was engaged with a Velthri battle group near Incursion Point 12. Enemy ships surrounded them on all sides, pouring plasma fire into their shields. But Santos remained calm, her hands moving across her console with practiced ease. "Target the command ship," Captain Pierce ordered. "Take out their flagship, and the rest will fall apart." Santos locked onto the enemy battleship, a massive vessel 3 times the size of the Vengeance. She calculated firing solutions, adjusted for the enemy's movement, and pressed the trigger. The Vengeance's main guns were plasma lances, weapons that fired concentrated streams of superheated matter contained within magnetic fields. Unlike Velthri plasma weapons, which spread out over distance, human plasma lances maintained their coherence until they struck their target. The effect was devastating. The enemy battleship's shields collapsed under the sustained barrage. The plasma burned through its armor, melted its internal systems, and finally reached its reactor core. The explosion was visible for thousands of kilometers. "Direct hit," Santos reported. "Target destroyed." Around them, the enemy formation began to fall apart. Without their flagship to coordinate them, the Velthri ships started making individual decisions, each captain trying to save his own vessel. Some tried to retreat. Others continued fighting. None of them succeeded. By the end of the first day, 8 of the 17 attack groups had been completely destroyed. The remaining 9 were in full retreat, their commanders desperately trying to reach the safety of Velthri space. But Admiral Cole had anticipated this too. Human pursuit forces had been positioned along every possible escape route. Fast destroyers and heavy frigates ran down the fleeing enemy ships, destroying them one by one. There would be no survivors, no one to warn the Empire about what was coming. The last ship of the Second Fleet, a damaged cruiser limping toward the border, was intercepted by a single Terran frigate. The human captain, a young woman named Lisa Grant, could have disabled the enemy ship and taken prisoners. Instead, she followed her orders. "Target their reactor," she commanded. 1 shot. The frigate's railgun fired, and the Velthry cruiser vanished in a flash of light. Captain Grant opened a communication channel, broadcasting on all frequencies so that anyone listening would hear her message. This message is for the Velthry Empire. 1,200 ships. 200,000 of your people. All of them dead because your leaders refused to listen? We warned you. We begged you to turn back. You chose to ignore us. Remember that when we come for you? She closed the channel and turned her ship toward the distant stars where the Velthry homeworld waited. The hunt was not over. It was just beginning. The Terran fleet arrived at the Velthry homeworld 6 months after the destruction of the Second Fleet. They had taken their time, moving slowly through enemy territory, destroying every military installation, every defensive platform, every ship that could pose even the smallest threat. By the time they reached the heart of the Empire, there was nothing left to oppose them. Admiral Catherine Cole stood on the bridge of the Resolute, looking down at the planet that had caused so much suffering. It was a beautiful world, she had to admit. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds drifting across its surface. It looked almost like Earth, almost like home. Commander Daniel Price stood beside her, reviewing the final tactical rep. Orts' face was tired, marked by months of combat and sleepless nights. But there was satisfaction in his eyes, too. They had done what they set out to do. They had broken the Empire. All orbital defenses have been destroyed, Price reported. Their ground forces have been neutralized. They have complete control of the space around their homeworld. Their leadership has requested unconditional surrender. Cole nodded slowly. She had known this moment would come. She had prepared for it, planned for it, dreamed about it during the long journey through Velthry space. But now that it was here, she felt nothing but emptiness. Open a channel to the surface, she ordered. The view screen flickered, and the face of Supreme Arbiter Malthus appeared. He looked nothing like the proud leader she had heard about. His skin was pale and loose, hanging from his bones like old cloth. His 4 eyes were dim, almost dead. The weight of defeat had crushed him completely. Admiral Cole, he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. The Velthry Empire surrenders, completely and unconditionally. We accept any terms you wish to impose. Please, I beg you, spare my people. Punish me. Punish our military leaders. Execute us all if you wish. But let the innocent civilians live. They did not choose this war. They do not deserve to die for the mistakes of their leaders. Cole studied him for a long moment. She thought about the first message the Empire had sent, the casual threats of enslavement and harvest. She thought about the laughter on Zeroth's bridge when they received the warning. She thought about all the species the Velthry had conquered, all the billions of lives they had destroyed. Part of her wanted revenge. Part of her wanted to order her fleet to bombard the planet until nothing remained but ash and memories. It would be justice in a way. An eye for an eye. Civilization for a civilization. But Cole was not a monster. None of the humans who had fought this war were monsters. They were soldiers, defenders, protectors of their people. They had done what they had to do to survive. But survival did not require genocide. Victory did not require extinction. Supreme Arbiter, she said finally, the Terran Confederacy does not seek the destruction of your people. We never wanted this war. All we ever asked was to be left alone, to live in peace on our own worlds. You could have given us that. Instead, you chose aggression, chose to ignore our warnings, chose to attack us not once but twice. And so we responded in the only way we could. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. However, crimes have been committed that cannot go unpunished. The Velthry Empire will face consequences for its actions. First, your military will be completely disbanded. Every warship in your fleet will be destroyed. You'll be allowed to keep only enough vessels for basic defense and internal security. Second, your territory will be reduced. You'll be permitted to keep your home world and the 3 nearest colonies. All other systems you have conquered will be granted independence. The species you have enslaved will be freed. Malthus bowed his head. It will be done. Whatever you ask, Third Cole continued. Your government will publicly acknowledge your aggression against the Terran Confederacy. You will broadcast to the entire galaxy what happened here and why. Every species in known space will learn the truth. They will learn that humanity warned you, that we gave you every opportunity to turn back, and that you refused. They will learn what happens to those who threaten our people. Yes, Admiral, we will tell the truth. Finally, you will release all slaves currently held within your remaining territory. Every single one, regardless of species. They will be transported to neutral space and given the choice of where they wish to settle. The Velthari Empire will pay for their transportation and provide resources to help them start new lives. For the first time, something other than despair crossed Malthus's face. It might have been relief. It might have been gratitude. It expected extinction. He had prepared himself to watch his entire civilization burn. Instead, the humans were offering him a chance to survive. "Thank you, Admiral," he said. "Your mercy is greater than we deserve." Cole shook her head. "This is not mercy, Supreme Arbiter. This is justice. Mercy would have been accepting your first surrender. Mercy would have been letting you retreat after the second battle. You refused both opportunities. What you are receiving now is the minimum punishment required to ensure you never threaten anyone again. Be grateful it is not more." The broadcast went out across the galaxy, just as Cole had demanded. Every species with the technology to receive it watched the Supreme Arbiter of the Velthari Empire confess his crimes and accept his punishment. They saw the massive human fleet hanging in orbit around the conquered world, silent and terrible, a reminder of what happened to those who crossed the wrong species, and every civilization in the galaxy understood the message. Humanity was young compared to the ancient empires. Humanity was small compared to the vast federations that spanned hundreds of worlds. But humanity was not to be underestimated. They had built their civilization on a foundation of conflict and struggle. They had survived everything their own world could throw at them, and they had emerged stronger for it. They did not start wars, but they finished them. In the years that followed, the Terran Confederacy became known throughout the galaxy as a species to be respected, not feared, but definitely not threatened. Trade agreements were signed. Diplomatic relations were established. Other civilizations learned that humans could be excellent friends and valuable allies, but everyone remembered the lesson of the Velthari Empire. At the edge of Terran space, the warning buoys continued their endless broadcast, repeating the same message in hundreds of languages, never stopping, never changing. This is Terran space. Entry by hostile forces is forbidden. This is your only warning. Some species laughed when they heard it, just as the Velthari had laughed. But wiser civilizations, the ones who had studied human history and understood what humans were capable of, listened carefully and turned their ships around. Admiral Catherine Cole retired from active service 2 years after the war. She lived out the rest of her days on a small farm on Earth, surrounded by the green hills and blue skies of her home world. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, she would look up at the stars and think about everything that had happened. She had never wanted to be a killer. She had never wanted to destroy an empire. But she had done what was necessary to protect her people, and she had no regrets, because humanity had been born in fire, forged in conflict, and tempered by centuries of struggle. They were not conquerors. They were not aggressors. They were survivors, and they would do whatever it took to remain so.